Welcome, and thank you for joining me. I know your time is valuable, so I genuinely appreciate that you've chosen to spend some of it with us today. Everything we do here has one purpose: helping thoughtful clinicians think more deeply, practice more effectively, and continue growing throughout their careers. I try to bridge research, clinical wisdom, and practical skills that you can begin using right away. If these programs are helpful to you, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the Psychotherapy Education and Training YouTube channel. Membership simply gives you access to additional workshops, live discussions, and educational resources for continued learning. Wherever you are in your professional journey, I'm grateful you're here. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Steve Johnson. I wanted to welcome you guys to a quick kind of early or late morning video. At least that's what the time is here. What I want to look at is a topic that I'm pretty excited about and use quite frequently, and kind of look at it as communication isn't the problem. That's at least what the title is, and why couples disconnect and how they reconnect. A huge problem that I have, in helping many of the clients that I experience in my practice. Most couples who come to therapy tell me they have a communication problem. Almost all of them say that. I rarely think that communication is the primary problem. I am certainly not saying that it is that it isn't a problem, but I think communication is where disconnection becomes visible. That's where it becomes very, very much seen. So today I would like to look beneath communication to some other factors. Let me do this by starting with fictitious vignette, but one that tries to get across some of the issues that I want to talk about. Let me tell you about Mark and Lisa, typical kind of couple. 2 successful careers, 2 wonderful children, shared calendars, shared parenting, highly organized, very responsible and fair. And they genuinely loved one another. But slowly, very, very slowly, they stopped building their relationship while they were kind of busy building their lives, careers, etc. And then the relationship began to drift. The relationship drift sets in. Work became much busier. Schedules became more and more tighter as the children got older. Every responsibility had an owner, and every task had a plan attached to it. There was very little flexibility over time. Date nights quietly disappeared. Family vacations became opportunities to kind of recover from work instead of creating memories. Conversations become complex and became logistic meetings about who does what, when, where, and laughter may have become less frequent. We're kind of in operational mode all the time. Curiosity about each other kind of faded, and affection became less spontaneously. Eventually, they both said the same thing. We are beginning to feel like roommates rather than a couple. Very common phrase I hear. And unfortunately, they came to somewhat of what I would think is an inadequate conclusion. And that is, they concluded that their biggest problem was with their communication. And I'm sure there was a communication problem. I don't think they did, right? I don't think that the roommates are the outcome. Disconnection is kind of the process that it is driving the that outcome of looking like or feeling like mere roommates. So let's do a little psychological digging here. What happened? Well, there wasn't one, dramatic event where things went off rail. No one terrible, absolutely horrible conversation. It slowly crowded out life, kind of slowly crowded out the relationship. The strands that held them together just gradually weakened. Trust, flexibility, shared purpose, curiosity, affection between each other, admiration for the other, shared rituals and generosity. Yeah, all a problem. One weakened strand rarely destroys a relationship. It's a cumulative, ongoing process. But many weakened strands eventually do. However, the seeking never stops. That feeling inside, that seeking for wanting more or deeper, still lingers, even when there's been disruption. Here's something I think that is important. Human beings don't stop seeking connection. I mean, it can happen, but generally we don't just say, I'm tired of all connections. I have had some clients who were like that, but sometimes they can overcome that radical kind of disconnection. The seeking, in other words, continues. The question then becomes something different. Where did that seeking go? Well, sometimes that seeking goes into work. The energy is put into work rather than the relationship. Sometimes into achievement, sometimes into alcohol or other drugs. Sometimes it's into spending or social media, or unfortunately, sometimes into an emotional affair. The seeking didn't disappear. It got deflected and attached to something else. It simply found kind of another place, right? Another place that the energy goes into that. And sometimes even the passion goes more into the work or into other kinds of pleasure seeking, things that occupy the time but don't feed the disconnection. So, as I said, I want to look beneath that communication. And as we've started looking at this couple, we can see how what started out as a good basis of deep connection kind of drifts into disconnection, strands that are holding each other together become kind of slowly weakened, and then the relationship drift comes in. Okay. And so I just want to say that this is not because someone has done absolutely something horrible. Sometimes inappropriate kinds of things may happen when we begin to invest in other areas of life rather than the connection with each other. In part because, as I said, they become roommates. And that's when they begin to think, I want to get reconnected. But they really think, you know what? When they come into therapy and I see them, they go, we're just not having good connections. We're not communicating really well. I don't think they fully understand me, or at least I don't feel heard and appreciated and understand. And as I said, the trust, the flexibility, the shared purpose, the affection and admiration, and even shared rituals and the children that may be involved in, the generosity. One by one, those strands began to be disconnected, and then we are still having the craving, still having the desire for connection, And that doesn't seem to go away. It remains, and it finds connection or connected to other objects in social media, spending, whatever that is. But the seeking never stopped. It simply found another place to attach. We often begin by talking about emotions in therapy that arise. We see anger, loneliness, although I don't think of loneliness as particularly an emotion. It may involve emotion, but loneliness can often set in. Sometimes we see resentment and disappointment, and those emotions really, really matter. But I also tend to see those emotions as accompanying the process rather than causing it. They tell us something very, very important. It is important, of course, in therapy to look at any of the emotions that are associated with this, and because they give us deep, deep information, and we cannot overlook those because they are so important. But they tell us that the strands of communication and connection, really the strands of the connection, have begun to weaken. And knowing that is tremendously helpful for us to establish a treatment plan for them. I believe that our job as therapists is a bit different sometimes than what we sometimes think. So my question becomes a bit different. Not how do we help them communicate better, but which strands in the relationship, in the connection, have weakened, which remain strong? How can we help this couple become deeply connected teammates again rather than roommates? And if therapy goes well, and as conflict become less frequent, less intense, and repair becomes more quickly available to us. I often ask couples one, for me, which is really important question, and that is, now what are you doing? What are you going to do with this relationship that you're in? What are you going to do that that can help save this relationship? How can we invest in that? Well, reducing conflict does create space to do that, but decreasing conflict doesn't automatically create closeness. I mean, it does give us space where we could begin to move toward that kind of closeness, but it doesn't automatically create closeness. Closeness grows when couples begin investing in one another again. It's an ongoing process. Not through grand gestures. It's not like going out and buying something big or taking this fantastic vacation around the world. Not through those grand gestures, although there may be some of those, and those may be a bit helpful. But generally what this comes about through small, repeated invitations. Maybe it's a conversation, a shared meal, a walk together, a laugh, a touch on the shoulder, making your partner's day just a little easier in some way because you know that they're undergoing a heavy load at the time. Protecting that time together rather than letting it get disrupted and replaced by something else. Become curious again rather than thinking this is the way it is and it will never change. Investment isn't another chore. It's an invitation to build a relationship that isn't simply surviving, but becomes more enjoyable, mutually enjoyable, more resilient, and very, very importantly, much more filled with meaning, more meaningful for both, and more deeply, deeply connected. Becoming because connection isn't something that couples find. A lot of people say we have to find that connection. It's something that they continually create and build. It's kind of like meaning. Meaning is not something that we go dig up in the backyard. It's not something that we find. It's something that we invest in and create, often day by day and choice by choice. Every invitation to invest is another strand that is woven into this relationship again. And over the coming months, I'm going to I'm going to be creating a series. And over the months, I want to be sharing much more about this connection centered approach, not only for couples who want to strengthen their relationship, but also for clinicians who want a practical framework that looks beyond communication skills, beyond just using I statements or I messages, and looks beyond even symptoms to the deeper relationship so that it can flourish. And again, when I say beyond I statements, I'm not saying that I statements are bad, or when I say beyond symptoms, I'm not saying that we ignore symptoms. We're therapists. Of course, we're going to look at symptoms and how individuals talk to each other. I hope you'll join me, however, in that journey. So I know this has been short, and I'm trying to do these little kinds of lectures so that if you have just a few minutes on a Friday, where you're maybe during lunch or after dinner, if you're another place in the world, that you will have the time to pick up on one of these lectures or workshops and begin to ask questions. So if you do have any comments, I ask you to share them right now. And I do want to put a shout out for Craig. Craig became one of the new members, and I'm so happy that he has joined us. I happen to know Craig, and I'm happy that he's joining us. And it's always an option for you too if you want to join us, and even give recommendations for some workshops or videos that you would like to see. Again, thank you for attending this really, really short presentation. Hope you can have a brown bag lunch and join us at some others. And again, I'm serious. Please feel free to send me a message about what kinds of topics you would like to see. I'm doing a series on couples, and then later we can move to others. So again, thank you, and I'm hoping that you have a great day. Bye-bye.